Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Democracy Theater, where I explore the area of politics, comedy, and the crossroad of both. I know in this media landscape we're supposed to move on to the next thing. Today, some people like to talk about how Donald Trump seems to be distancing himself from Elon Musk, but I wanted to get back to the podcast with Dave Smith and Douglas Murray on Joe Rogan. My question is, who's lying to Joe Rogan, or who is not making sure that Joe Rogan gets accurate information? What happened? Has Jamie been told not to say anything? Is he only surrounded with yes men, with people who are dependent on him or were dependent on him, so they owe him? I mean, let's be clear, that man has made more people millionaires than probably anybody else in the history of America. Joe Rogan is a good guy, especially to his friend, right? So that's not that. But things are slipping through that shouldn't slip through on a podcast as consequential as his. And I wanted to talk about that one. So let's go back to the thing where we're talking about the experts and the credentialism, and where people like Crystal Ball is, how dare they come into Joe Rogan's house and complain about who he has on as guest, which is a weird thing that you can't ask Joe Rogan about his guest selection. And that's not a lie. I don't know if there's been a tilt, but there's certainly been an exclusion of some views. And one of the reasons that I kind of stepped away from the podcast where it's pure politics, because so many wrong things are said, or so many things out of context are said, especially about the war in Ukraine. Why does Joe Rogan have Ian on then? If he's not an expert at anything, why does he have it on? Was that conversation worth his curiosity in people? I don't know. Maybe. Again, if he's not an expert and he's just a history nerd, why does Joe Rogan have him on? I guarantee you can't find an episode of Joe Rogan having a white belt in jiu-jitsu on where they're discussing the intricacies of jiu-jitsu or cage fighting. Guarantee it. Funny, right? Because during the podcast that people were also upset that Murray said, "Hey, listen, everybody can talk about it, but really you should go somewhere if you want to talk about it." And certainly the people who have been to a place should opinions outweigh the people who've just read about it. But somehow you have to consume his content. You can't just listen to people talk about his content. See how that works? Right. But if you're going to do a debate, if you're going to come out with a counter-narrative, if that's what you're coming with a counter-narrative to all the scholars who've gone before you, and one of the most renowned scholars that are living today on a subject like Churchill, and you won't let your work stand up to peer review, that doesn't drive. Like, if you're going to come out, if you were just an amateur historian and you came out and you said basically the same thing that everybody is saying, that's fine. No, you don't have to debate shit. But you're coming out and saying something different. You're coming out and saying that Churchill is the chief villain, or one of the chief villains. So this little compilation was made here. It's not what he said. Time for Churchill thread. Question mark. Time for a Churchill thread. Let's do this. Why I think Churchill was a chief villain of World War II. A, not the, A. So maybe he thinks Hitler was one of them too, but who the fuck knows? I know that sounds like hyperbole. Yeah, he's not claiming to be hyperbolic. He's saying it sounds like it, but it's not. He doesn't mean to be. He means what he's saying. He's not exaggerating to prove a point. Churchill didn't order the most death, oversee the most atrocities, or commit the worst crimes. But most of those crimes could not have been committed if the war had not happened and Churchill was let was the leader most intent on making it happen. Yeah, if I could read, I might even be good at this. Anyway, yeah, the pin was. There's no joke, right? He's not talking to him on a podcast. They're not even sitting at a dinner table and it was recorded or something, right? He wrote a tweet. He's making a thread on Twitter. That's not joking around. So you can look this up for yourself. How many nations had and areas had Hitler invaded before this? And then these people who love to talk about Putin's red line, especially Dave and Putin's red line in Ukraine and NATO or whatever. What was Britain's and France's red line to Hitler? And did he give a shit about it? Of course not. That's not what it sounds. I know that sounds like hyperbole. That doesn't say like I'm being hyperbolic. No, you're fucking wrong. And why hadn't young Jamie figured that? Why hadn't young Jamie looked this up? Again, it's not what he fucking said. Why are they covering for him? Why are they lying for him? And that is the big question, right? What is it that's so important that there's a group of people that need to change history so that Hitler is less of a bad guy, that Churchill is more of a bad guy? What's going on? This is just not just happening. This is not being just, he didn't just happen to get on the biggest podcast in the world. Like something is fishy around this. Why is it so important to change the narrative about Hitler? Are we supposed to get warm and fuzzy about dictatorships? What is this? I don't know, but I'm going to stop now before this thing crashes again. Thank you if you watched this, and especially all the way to the end. Thank you very much. If you found anything of value, I appreciate it. If you found it was not of value at all, I really do apologize. Anyway, I hope to see you back here again soon. Take care.